Today on Steve's Makerspace, it's lots of new Gamecraft parts. We'll do some experiments and I'll show you some hovercrafts and a plane. Hi everybody, Steve from Steve's Makerspace, and today we are in Gamecraft and we have a new update that's got all sorts of cool stuff in it. I'm going to give you an overview of all the new blocks that are featured. I'll show you the basic functioning of some logic blocks, and then I'm going to go into experiments with all of the different physics blocks that are introduced. And I'll show you some hovercrafts, and I'll show you this plane right here. Alright, we're going to go through these new parts really quickly, and then we'll get into more details. So we have a memory bit, we have a counter, and a timer, and this isn't a new part, but we have the ability to do loops now. You can see this is going in a loop. We couldn't do loops before. So these four things are going to really improve our ability to do logic things, and I'll get to that later. We also have this number to text block, which allows us to convert numbers into text. So we can do some math, put it through a number to text block, and then display it on a text block. For gaming, we have these new Hud blocks. A center HUD for general messages right in the middle of the window, an objective HUD for displaying objectives that the player needs to achieve, and a game stats HUD to show things like how much time is left. So those are awesome. We have an object identifier and an object filter, which is a little hard to explain. There's also a player filter and a team filter, which I'm not going to go over. So in the next episode, I'm going to be focusing on these HUD blocks and the object identifier and the object filter, and I'll be making a simple game called Block Placer, so check out that video next. There is a mover block, which is sort of like an invisible thruster, a rotator block for rotating your build, a movement dampener so that if your build is moving, it'll slow down, a rotation dampener so that if your build is going back and forth too much, it'll slow down the rotational movement. We have the advanced mover and the advanced rotators. Instead of just going in one direction like these do, it has three inputs for each axis. And that's all the blocks that are introduced. It's a lot. And then one other thing is that the stats have been improved so that you not only have a slider, but you can actually type in a new stat right here. Just type it in. There we go. So that is really nice. Let's go over the basic functions of the bit, the timer, and the counter. So the bit, it's got the 1, the 0, and the toggle. And so if I start this up, this sets it to 1, this resets it to 0, this toggles it back and forth. So that's a basic memory bit, pretty important for logic. Next, the basic timer function. We've got a start, a stop, and a reset. And then what do we do? Let's see, we can say it's 2 seconds is how much time we want to spend. This can go all the way up to 600 seconds. We have where we can tell it whether we want to display milliseconds or only the seconds. What do we want the output to be when we get to the 2-second mark? The progress is basically a percentage of completion, and the text is going to be outputting the timer to a text block. So here I can hit start, and you see we've gotten to 2 seconds and we had an output of 1. Let's reset it. So I hit start, I can pause it. You can see the output 95 milliseconds here, and we're at 48% of the 2 seconds mark. I can reset it. So that's the basic timer function. Basic counter function. If we look in here, we've got increment, decrement, and reset. That's pretty self-explanatory. This is where you identify the target number. This can go up to 999. We can put a 2 here. When our target is reached, it'll output over here. And that's going to be a logic number, so it's going to be outputting a 1. Then the progress is basically a percentage of completion. And the text is what number is in the counter, output to a text block. So let's do this. We can go up, we can go down. Now this, I had this, let's see, what was the target? 2. Let's make the target 10. That makes more sense. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and now we get a 1 there. This is the number here is appearing here. This is a percentage. Now here I'm multiplying by 100 in order to get a proper percentage, if that's something you want. Obviously, if I increase this to, say, 20, and I start doing my target, this is going to be 5%, 10%, see? So that's basic counter function. Next, let's take a look at some of these awesome physics blocks. So first we have this mover block, and if I hit E, boom, it takes off. And then I can attach things to it, and there you go. So one thing you'll notice is that even though I put something, say like this, and you might think if this was a thruster, this end would go off and this end would stay a little bit behind and it would go in a circle. But the mover actually looks at the center mass, the center of the object, and it's actually applying thrust at the center of the mass. So I think in this case it's going to the right because the block itself is having some drag on it. I think if I put the block, let me see. So if I were to attach the mover here, I think it'll go straight. There you go. So that's the only reason it was going sideways. So here I've got one mover going this way and 3 movers going that way, and you'll see that this multiplies the force. And I don't know why it spins like that. That seems like something is wrong with it because all of these are the same. It should be just going straight, so I'm not sure why it spins. But here is an example, the same mass, 1, 2, 3. I suppose this one actually has more mass because of these blocks, but you can see that this one goes faster than these two because this has more mover blocks on it. This one I've got 3 movers, one going this up, one going that way, and one going that way, and you'll see it takes off up and vertical. Now here I have a mover block, and I'm going to turn it on and then go negative, and now it's pushing my character, and now it's going off, and there it's gone. Okay. Here is some more mover blocks. I'm going to turn this on and you'll see these two move together, so they're exactly the same. So they have exactly the same force, and so they just offset each other. These mover blocks, let me, if I turn this one on, it goes straight up and it comes down, and it's going slightly, it was going slightly to the left. Will it do that this time? Yes, it's moving slightly to the left. I'm not sure why. I'm wondering if this landscape might be tilted slightly. But anyway, the other thing that's interesting, if I look at this, there's this local axis reference, and then there's a drop down here and you can do time start. So time start means what direction is this facing when I start the game, and that's the direction it's going to try to maintain. So it's going to, this one is going to continue to go upwards, whereas this one, when I start the game, this is going to tilt to the side, and it's set to local, which means that it's going to push forward, and instead of going this one going straight up, this one is going to go up at an angle. So let's watch that. So there we go. That one goes up at an angle, that one goes straight up. So here are some rotator blocks, and if I start rotating this, you can see this rotates. I've also got this rotating using a time start. This one is rotating using local. So they're both rotating, but you can see that that one continues trying to go that direction. This one, it got knocked on its side and now it's rotating this way. So that one that just fell off the cliff over there wouldn't do this. This one is set to local. This one back here, I have set to time start and put it at an angle. So when we start it, you can see it's kind of trying to maintain that angle of rotation, and it's quite jumpy. This one I got a mover and a rotator. Let's see what happens there. And I can go back and forth and kind of create some movement. So that's kind of interesting. So here's a little doohickey I made. Turn on this timer and this thing goes back and forth like so. So I've got this set up to do pulsing. The way this works, I've got it set to 0.5 seconds. So when it ends, when it gets to that 0.5 seconds, it goes to start and also goes to reset. And so it'll just continue counting up from 0 to 0.5. So if I hit start, it counts up to half a second and then restarts. So this is going to the rotator block on the left, but it's also going to this NOT gate, and the NOT gate is going to the rotator on the right. So if this says 0, then the NOT, it has a 1, which means that that one is going to be activated. And if this is 1, then that one's going to be activated, but this one has an output of 0, and so that one will not be activated. So that's how I'm switching back and forth between the two rotator blocks. Like so. Here I've got rotators, and I'm showing that the rotation increases speed because there's more force with more rotators. So here, this one is, whoops, let's try not to do that again. Okay, so this one seems to be going pretty fast, but this one is clearly going a lot faster. And then this one, I was just seeing what happens if you get some other object with the rotator. Let's bump them into each other. And that one is just flying off. Here, let's try that again. Boom. See what happens. Okay. It was doing other stuff before. Oh, there we go. Now it's sort of like a upside down top. One more time. One more time. Come on. Do something else. Whatever. Don't play. Fine. This one I've got a advanced rotator inside this ball, and I'm controlling it with this seat. So let's get in, and I believe I'm using mouse wheel, yes, for one of them, and then I've got W, S, A, and D. It's pretty hard to control, honestly, but you know, that's a thing you could do. This is my first attempt at a hovercraft. So here I've got some rotational dampening, and this advanced mover is set to time start. So let's see what happens with that. I've got this set to my mouse wheel, so I'll go up a little bit. Let's try to hover. It's not very good as hovering. And I'm going to the right and to the left and forward and backwards, except now I'm still going forwards, backwards, left, right. So if I turn to face my direction, and now I try to go hit right, it's doing this, of course, because it's maintaining the direction that it started with. Okay, so this one is, let's see, I've got a toggle on with the bit for the, this is my main thrust up. So let's get into here. So if I believe it's control gets me into hover mode, and now I can go forwards and backwards, and this time if I do right, it's rotating me, and so I can point in the direction I want to go. So this is a little bit better, I think. Let's go spacebar for up, and I believe it was shift for down. There we go. It still can get a little bit tilted, but it works pretty well. You know, a decent flyer. Now notice if I hit spacebar, I'm still going up. That's because I've got time start for the up and down movement. This one is my attempt at a real hovercraft. So you can see I've got sensors detecting the ground. So let's get started on this one. And again, it's control to get into hover mode. And this works pretty well. The one thing that is a problem, let's say I run into something and I get a little tilted. Now it's going to stay in this position, in this tilted position. It still works, but it's tilted. And so that is because these movers are working on the center of the mass, so it doesn't really care whether my object is level or not. So here is another hovercraft. So an interesting thing is that the center of mass is basically broken up by things like the motor, so that this has its own center of mass apart from this. So if I want to have each of these legs be pushed up at different forces, then I have to separate it using something like a motor or a hinge, something like that. So one improvement I made also is that the command module here, command computer here, is doing set camera zoom distance 8, so that I don't have to zoom out every time I get in the seat, and this is attached to this seat. There we go. So this is attached to the seat. Let's get in and we can just see how this one works. So control to start hovering, and so the only problem with this one is that when I go forward, it does do this leaning forward thing, which I don't like, and I could probably figure out a way to fix that, but it does, you know, recover itself. So after I've leaned forward and I stop, it will fix itself. So I think this is pretty good. I could probably figure out a way to get it to stay level more, but pretty good. So now here is my plane that I built. I think it looks pretty good. You can see there is quite a lot going on in here. I've just got a ton of rotators and movers and all sorts of stuff in here. So let's just give it a whirl. And I'm going to hit Control to start hovering, spacebar to hover upwards, W to go forwards, left mouse button to roll, A to turn left, D to turn right. If I keep hitting W, then it keeps going forward. I suppose we could toggle W. Let's see, I need to tilt up. The things on the wings are just cosmetic, of course. What's going on? My roller balls just stopped working. Oh, there we go. I wasn't doing it right. Okay, so yeah, and the tail rotor, of course, is also just cosmetic. It's really using rotators to do this, and of course the propeller is cosmetic. But anyway, it works pretty well, I think. Control to go down, to hover down. There we go, and control to toggle off the hover. So that's the plane. and it's available on the workshop and vehicles. We can go ahead and take a look. I'm not going to explain all this, but you can see all the stuff in here. Lots of stuff. Okay. There's my toggle right there for toggling it into hover mode. So anyway, that's it. Alright, that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed this. Everything's available on the workshop in gizmos. If you like this episode, give me a like, consider subscribing to the channel. Love to see comments always, if you want to give me some down below. My next episode, I'll be showing you these Hud blocks and these object identifier and object filters, and how you can make a game out of those. I have a simple game called Block Placer, so check that out. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye now. Steve's Makerspace. So that's basically how... Okay.